Hey guys, welcome back to more HOA stories. In this video, an HOA Karen gets me swatted after I tow her car off my private property. Let's dive right into the video. I have lived at this place for 20 years and decided it was time to build a new home. Had the plans drawn up and trotted down to the planning department to get the building permit. When they were approved, I returned to pay the plan check fees. Then I was informed that the county planned to widen the road in front of the house as part of a plan to extend the road to a main artery to the north. They wanted me to give them 15 feet along the 250 feet frontage of my property before they would issue the permit. They knew they had me over a barrel, so I agreed. But wait, there's more. I had to pay the fees to make the transfer to the county. I then left with my approved plans and 15 feet x 250 feet less property and clearly pissed. A year passed, the house got built and we moved in, but I was still pissed, so I came up with the get even plan. The area is relatively flat and drainage is needed to drain excess water on the rare occasions that we get above average rainfall. There's a 125 feet open drainage ditch along the road that feeds into 125 feet of buried drainage pipe, basically the whole 250 feet frontage. I contacted the county and told them that their drainage ditch was clogged with debris and needed to be cleaned out before the rainy season. They agreed to send a crew. Then I told them that their drainage pipe was also clogged and needed to be cleaned out. Again, they said they would take care of it. To their credit though, the county road crew showed up with a backhoe, dump truck and the crew. The ditch was pretty straightforward and soon was cleaned up, but the foreman took one look at the pipe and said it was too far gone and would have to be replaced. Gee, owning property can be a bitch. So they dug it all up, including 2 driveways, installed 120 feet of 18-inch corrugated drain pipe and replaced 2 driveways. I thanked them for being good neighbors, taking good care of their property. And well, the whole project lasted a week, so the cost was not insignificant. Another year goes by and I get a letter from the county. They have changed their mind and won't be extending the road after all and want to give me my property back. Of course I would have to pay all of the fees again. Oh well, I did get a new drain line and newly paved driveways out of the deal. Edit, wow, that sure blew up. I've replied to a few posters with more of the backstory. That's about as far as I'll go. Most of the opinions are just that, opinions. I'm the only one that has the actual documentation, my Pearl Harbor file in case I proceeded with a lawsuit. This has certainly been entertaining. Flame on Redditors. And the next one, aka the title story, was submitted by a viewer. It is titled, Smug HOA Karen swats me after I get her car towed off my property. She told the cops that I have a hostage, but lied about it. However, don't be surprised, the story starts in kind of an innocent way if you ask me. Here are some notes that OP apparently has written to this Karen in question. Sorry for the misunderstanding, this driveway is my public property. I assume you didn't receive my previous note. Please don't park here, private property, please stay out. I have no other way to get out of my driveway. I have a job I need to get to. I must assume you are ignoring my notes. I will have to take matters into my own hands if you won't cooperate. Honestly, I was effing nice. And those were just a few examples of my notes. I did everything in my power to stay patient and my neighbor refused to even acknowledge my notes or my presence. She just turned and walked away if I ever caught her outside of her house. She would sprint into her door and lock it if she was close enough. This HOA Karen could not even act truly oblivious. Sorry, some extra context, I think I got carried away a bit. So my HOA neighborhood has notoriously small driveways. Mine is a bit longer than usual, but narrow and lined by trees. A few cars can fit in it technically, but only the last one can get out at any given time. My next door neighbor, Karen, has a family and they hardly have what should be called a driveway. She could and should park on the street, but she has the most infuriating habit of parking on my driveway and then locking my car in my driveway. If I did not have the option for remote work with my job, then she would have either cost me multiple days of work or Uber charges. As it is, I might have plans to get out of my home after a week of pouring hours into work from home only to find myself trapped by her stupid Infiniti SUV. So my patience reached its end. I had just spent 3 days trapped by her car when I planned to go into work, and even if I didn't exactly have extravagant plans for my weekend, I did want to get out to run errands. I needed to actually interact with people instead of just picking my groceries up off my doorstep. When I saw the car blocking me into the driveway, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I called the tow truck and then decided to shower while I waited. If I was towing her car, I might as well have some fun while I am out. I made sure I was done and out of the house again by the time the tow truck actually arrived. They are not exactly fast when it's not an emergency, thank goodness for that though. The man could not even make it out of his truck before Karen was storming down her path. It was like she had waited for the man instead of me. She immediately tried to dispel him and say that the tow had been mistaken. She, rightfully I guess, said it was her car and that there was no need for this to continue. I stepped into the conversation in the brief pause that she was forced to take in order to breathe. I said, I acknowledge that the car is hers. That is actually the issue since the car is on my property. The tow truck driver asked Karen if she would like the opportunity to move her car. She refused and said that she would sue me if I tried to even tow her car. She claimed that good neighbors would help their neighbors out and that her driveway was criminally small, and obviously she is criminally entitled, so it was completely understandable that she needed the space and I should take it up with the neighborhood. And just to be clear, I was not going to try to tow her car. I was going to have it towed. Legal action was the last thing I was concerned about, and by the time she seemed to take the situation slightly seriously, the car was on the truck and the driver was getting ready to leave. She responded to the escalation by starting a screaming fit at me. I just ignored her as she had been ignoring me since this whole farce started. I walked to my car, got in and started to drive off. She stood in front of my car for a moment and I braked and stared at her while she screamed. I rolled my window down and she wrongly assumed that meant I was ready to talk to her. Instead though, she came around to my window and I blared my music and gunned the engine to get away from where she could block me. So then I went and saw a movie and then took my time with my groceries. Before heading home, I went by a coffee shop and got myself a matcha latte to bring an end to a very satisfying excursion out and about. When I got home, I started unloading all the groceries and changed into comfortable clothes to lounge around in. I live alone at the moment, but I was planning to get online and play some games with some friends. I had just finished putting up the groceries and was enjoying my coffee when suddenly the living room window and front door exploded inwards. My coffee was flying through the air while shock had me choking on the last gulp that I had swallowed trying to scream. By the time I could breathe again, I'm being thrown to the ground and a knee to my spine has the air out of my lungs again. I cannot even cough at this point. Having guns pointed at you is an experience that really changes the way your brain operates. I'm sure someone might be able to tell me that the same happens whenever it's a handgun, it's lethal enough after all, but multiple assault rifles certainly get you thinking of just how weak my crush to the floorboard's body is. They screamed at me asking where the hostage was. You've got it wrong, this is not real. They kept screaming though. Eventually, they had cleared out the house and figured out what I'd been telling them. I had cooperated entirely, but they were a SWAT team and had thought that a hostage was at risk, so I'm not upset with them. I will say, never SWAT anyone, it's terrifying and it can truly put their life at risk. I had plenty of time sitting and watching my house get tossed to realize who had done this and why. They had to take me in for questioning to be safe, and I wanted nothing less than to speak to the cops at this point, so I was fine with that. During questioning, I mentioned the tow earlier that day and how Karen had reacted. She said she wanted to sue, but I think everyone involved was more than well aware that it wouldn't go anywhere if she even tried that. So she took it into her own hands, and they looked into who had called the dispatch and traced it back to Karen's number. They went to arrest her. I was still in the station as they led her to the interrogation room. All the while she screamed that this was wrong and in outrage and that she would sue them. The officers told me that things really quieted down once they confirmed that they had traced the number. Karen had spent the afternoon watching and waiting for me to get home. She did not wait long after I got home before calling. She screamed at dispatch that her child had been stolen and she saw her in the window next door before a hand came from behind the curtain and plucked her away. She even had a history of false reports to emergency dispatches within the city. They had been locked, but things had not escalated as far as her SWAT team in the past. With the history and the fact that this call had done so much, consequences were ensured. All the surrounding circumstances brought everything up to felony-level charges and she could post bail, but that was her last chance to walk free before they sentenced her to multiple years prison time. She was also responsible for some fines and restitution payments to the city for their costs to repair my home. I got reimbursed for anything that was broken in the S.W.A.T raid and my door was replaced and reinforced, and best of all, my driveway is now entirely my own. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, this story went really quickly from annoying driveway parking drama to a full-on SWAT team raid. This could have gone wrong really easily and OP easily could have gotten hurt, so I'm glad that everything went fine in the end and that Karen ended up behind bars. Let's hope she will never bother OP again with the stupid driveway. Either way, the next one is a malicious compliance story. And if you have enjoyed this story so far, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we are getting close to 130,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. I love malicious compliance. Our neighbor reported our old but sturdy shed to the city for being too large without a permit. The inspector comes out, measures, but nope, the shed is well under the size limits and does not need a permit. The husband then starts asking questions about the rules and gets all the specifics on what is allowed. The shed is old and very basic, why not have a bigger, better shed? Oh, and by the way, the inspector knows the neighbor she used to work in the planning department, knows the rules and clearly was just trying to make trouble. He looks into her property and says that he can see a good half-dozen issues if we would like to report them. We laugh, but nah, we are gonna go to the malicious compliance route. We rip down the shed hoping the neighbor is smugly gloating to herself. We then do nothing for 3 weeks, well, except draw plans, buy material, lay the foundation and line up a couple construction friends to help. Then one Saturday, our glorious big new shed goes up. Now, we hadn't heard from this neighbor in the 3 weeks, but now she is asking about our new shed. She would love to see inside if we don't mind. And we did. Cue another inspection notice for building a granny flat, the shed on our property, and obviously the inspection goes fine. Well, except those violations on neighbor's property, that unpermitted open fire pit built right against the retaining wall and fence is a concern and we don't want it burning down our new shed. She's got a couple guys out there right now, jackhammering out concrete. I think I'll go offer them some cold drinks from the mini fridge in the new shed. And the next one is a pond drama story. This happened some years ago. I bought 4 acres and a house out in the country. The neighbor in this story has about 6 acres. The people I had bought the property from put in a small pond several years before, and when they did, part of the raised ground surrounding the water went over the neighbor's property line by maybe 5 to 10 feet. I did not know about the property line issues when I bought the place. About a year after I moved in, my neighbors decided to have a fit about the property line. So they claimed the previous owners had promised to move the raised area, and if I did not move it, they would. Plus they would take me to court about it. After going back and forth about it with them, threatening lawyers and coming to my work to argue about it, I told them I would move it. So then I contacted a guy with a small bulldozer and I told him that I wanted him to reshape the pond. It was summertime by then and the pond had mostly dried out as it was shallow. I wanted it deeper and to move the dirt on the neighbor's side inward by a few feet. Now for the malicious compliance. Making the pond deeper and moving the dirt wall meant that I now had a lot of extra dirt that needed to go somewhere. I told him, pile that dirt up along the neighbor's property line as long and as high as you can make it so that it blocks the view between our 2 properties, which he did. The new dirt wall between my neighbor and me stretches from the pond to most of the way down the property line and is about 10 feet tall. My neighbor was pissed, but there wasn't anything he could do. There's a ruling that says no structures on the property line, but dirt is not a structure. He tried to get the local neighborhood board involved, but I just ignored their letter offering to move the dirt for free, as they did not have a case and I liked having the dirt wall between us. And yeah guys, I guess that is how you get malicious compliance / revenge on someone with a simple dirt wall. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you ever had any interesting disputes with your neighbors, then feel free to please post them either here in the comments on Reddit at r/ripestories or send them to my email at ripereddit@gmail.com. Thank you so much in advance, I would love to read your story. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. If any of you, like me, live in the UK, you will know how hot our summers can get. Well, let's be honest, they don't get that hot, we are just not used to the heat and our houses are not equipped for keeping heat out. You will also know that pools are uncommon here, and the next best thing being a homemade slip and slide or a paddling pool that can fit no more than 2 toddlers. So yes, I know that the heat is usually an issue, but I would never have thought anyone would go to the lengths my neighbor did to cool down. I'm calling her my neighbor for the sake of this story, but in reality she lives about a 5-minute drive away from me, all the way down to the bottom of the town. I was fortunate enough to inherit a lovely property from my late grandfather. It's a quaint little rural property at the top of a town in the north of Wales. The land stretches for a good few acres and the house itself is set atop a small hill that stretches all the way to a small river near the bottom. It is a lavish property to say the very least, and in this economy I'm very lucky to own it. I've done my own refurbishments over the years, the main one being adding an outdoor pool next to my house. It took a lot of money and time, but once it had been done, it added nearly 100k to the property value. In the winter it's not much use of course, but in the summer it really is a blessing. So that takes us to the start of this story, when it was the first few weeks of July and the air was heating up. A woman had knocked on my door. "Hello, would you mind if we used your pool?" a woman asked as I opened the door. She gave me a sweet smile and I would have said yes if it was not for 6 children standing behind her, all of which looked to be full of cold. "I'm sorry, no," I replied and began to shut the door. "Why not? What on earth is the issue?" The woman put her foot out to stop the door closing. "You have 6 kids with you. Kids make messes and they all look ill." "These are my kids and I can promise you they don't make any mess, nor are they ill." "Well, they look certainly ill. It's just a bit of a summer cold, everyone gets it, I'm sure you will cope." "Look ma'am, I'm sorry, but you cannot use my pool." She stared at me for a moment as if thinking I would cave and just let her use it if she stared long enough. "Why don't you go to the public pool? It's half a mile south of town," I suggested, to which her face scrunched up. "We cannot use a public pool. Think of all the germs that are just swimming around in there." She flailed her hands to emphasize this point. "So germs are a problem for you, but they shouldn't be for me?" I asked with a smirk, knowing I had caught her in a knot. She stumbled over her next words before turning around and stomping off to her car, and the kids following. I stupidly thought that would be the end of that woman, but alas, the next day she was back and this time she had another woman with her and her kids once again. "Hey, my sister is saying you won't let her use this pool, but I think that cannot be right, because who would deny someone of such a small request?" the second woman asked, batting her eyelashes. If it was not for the persistence and rudeness of the last woman, I probably would not have minded them using the pool, but hey, they were just being ridiculous now. "It's my pool, you are not entitled to be able to use it," I replied, scything as I crossed my arms. "That's ridiculous. We came all this way and now we cannot use this pool?" the original woman asked. "Again, it's my pool, so no." "At least we asked. We could have just jumped in." "Gosh, how can you be so… you know what, I think we all got off on the wrong foot. I'm Julie. I live at the bottom of the town near the shops. Me and my family don't have the luxury to have such a pool, and as you know, it has been roasting this time of year. Would there be any way we could use your pool for as little as 10 minutes? Julie, the original woman, asked. "I'm Sam, and you know what? Sure, as long as you promise to clean up after yourselves. And this is a one-time thing, okay?" "Thank you," Julie screeched, and the 2 women and 6 kids ran off and jumped straight into the pool. They had come wearing their swimming suits. I sighed, annoyed that I ended up caving to their wishes, and went inside. Half an hour later, I could still hear them outside, but they were not being too loud, so I just let them stay. I remember falling asleep and waking up to silence, and looking outside, I saw that they had gone. But had they cleaned up after themselves? Of course not. There was food wrappers all over the place, the deck chairs were in different places, and some of the flowers I had planted near the pond had been trampled on. So wow, this is what I get for graciously allowing them to use my pool. I cried, angrily cleared up the mess, muttering to myself as I did so, "They better not come around again, or I swear." Alas, they did, the following day. "Hi Sam. I know you said it was a one-time thing, but could we perhaps use your pool again?" Julie asked. She had her children with her again, plus a few other friends. "No, you left my pool area in an absolute state the other day. I might have agreed otherwise." "Listen, you know how kids are. You said your kids don't make a mess, and I thought even if they did, you would have the common courtesy to clean up after them anyway." The woman looked between her friends, all of their expressions unreadable, but I learned later exactly what they were silently plotting. "You're right, we should have cleaned up, and it was rude of us to come asking again. Good day." And with that off they went. At 2 in the morning that night, I woke up to the sound of loud music playing outside. Alarmed, knowing I live quite isolated, I dashed to my window to look outside where the music was coming from. I nearly fainted when I saw what was happening down below. Julie was in my pool along with her kids, strange time for them to still be awake by the way, plus the friends from earlier, and about 20 other people that she must have dragged along. She was basically throwing a pool party in my pool on my property. I dashed downstairs as fast as I could. "What are you all doing? Get out of my pool right this instant!" I demanded, halting the music on their record player. "No, we are here now." "Let us be," Julie yelled back, her words slurring, so I figured alcohol was also involved. "Turn the music back on," someone else called out. "Guys, I'm not gonna ask again. Get out of here." "Call the police on this creep," another guest spoke up. I watched as someone got on the phone to the police, gobsmacked. How could they possibly think that they were in the right in this moment? I decided to just wait until the cops showed up. I would have needed to phone them anyway. Because of my rather remote location, it took a quick minute for them to arrive, in which time everyone carried on partying like nothing was wrong. "So what seems to be the issue here? Who phoned in?" an officer asked once they arrived on scene. "This man is being a total creep. We are trying to have a pool party and he just came out of nowhere. He is not invited." Julie spoke as she climbed out of the pool. "Sir, this is my house. Honestly, I told them they couldn't use the pool and here they are throwing a party and they still won't leave." We all went back and forth for a couple more minutes until I ended up pulling up the CCTV footage on my phone, which showed them asking for permission, me saying no, and then them creeping over with all their stuff at early hours in the morning. "And who is the head of all of this?" the officer asked. Almost everyone pointed to Julie. I pressed charges, of course, not that I needed to, but I figured it was the punishment she deserved. She ended up having to pay a hefty fine for any damages caused to my property, plus a fine for trespassing. Every other guest at the party also had to pay a smaller fine, which I'm sure will be the cause of the end of the friendship with Julie. To top it all off, Julie was arrested that very night for trespassing and making a false report to the police. Crime never pays off. Trust me, Julie, she will be confined to a very small space for quite a while now, but I'm not sure this entitled Karen really regrets what she did. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.